Okay.
Oh. Okay, number 1 on the agenda is the astronomy course discussion. And I know Dr. McCombie had requested that, but then after she reread the standard, she said it's not really necessary unless anybody has anything they want to talk
What was her issue with it? Sue, do you know?
It was teaching of evolution.
And Big Bang and
And
stuff
Big
like
Bang
that. So we talked about how do we teach those things, and we had a conversation about how we don't teach anything as scientific fact unless it is in fact scientific fact. So Newton's laws, we teach them as fact because they are scientifically proven laws. The Big Bang theory is a theory. The theory of evolution is a theory, and we are very respectful of people's personal beliefs. We teach the theory and let people come draw their own conclusions. We give them the information, let them process it. So we do teach those things, but we teach them as the scientific theories that they are. We don't,
And they are in the steel standards.
and they are in a still
So
state.
they have
So,
to be.
Both concepts.
yes, sir. So,
Okay.
and that's in general, if I could say, just if anybody's listening at home, but that's how we approach everything. And given this coming political turmoil, I think that's also very important that we make sure that we know that as a rule, we never teach kids what to think. We teach kids how to think, right? We're never going to tell them that, we believe what Mr. Trump says or what Mrs. Harris says. We're going to present them both sides of the argument and let them draw their own conclusion, because that's what education is, So we don't indoctrinate anyone with anything. We just give them information, and we only have debates about politics in the appropriate classes. So if you teach math, that's not the place for political debate, but government class, absolutely. That should be discussed, and we want it to be discussed, but the teacher in that role is always Switzerland or the devil's advocate. Tell me more about that. What do you think about what she said? Those kinds of things to continue the conversation and make the thought go deeper. Never, well, I don't care what you think, this is what's right. So that won't happen in our schools, should not happen in our schools.
And that elections class, that's an elective, right? And I think Mr. Schutte, that I see is teaching.
Popular one, yes.
Yeah, especially this semester. That should be a fun one to teach.
We'll have its moments for sure.
That'll do a good job.
He does a very nice job.
Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely. So I think unless there's anything else on that one, I think we're good.
Drone program. I don't see Mr. Lehman here. Is he?
He's supposed to be coming or joining us.
Should we move on and come back to him?
Yeah.
Also, Kayla Collecta.
She could not be here, but she did send you something. I printed off and put it all your spaces. Tara printed it off and put all your spaces. But it's just a request for official approval to move forward on an overseas trip planned for next October. The reason she wants permission is she doesn't have the details ironed out enough to actually fill out the field trip request, but she wants to give the students ample time to fundraise because it's a very expensive trip. So she wants your permission to move forward with the fundraising portion of this so that she can come back once she has this plan booked with the actual field trip request, with full understanding that, if there's any problem with it, you don't have to approve it at that point. But she did want permission to move forward with good faith with, that you could work out whatever problems that may occur.
Given all the turmoil in the world, is there going to be in our planning process any kind of a contingency so that if world events would prohibit the travel, that there's some thought process given to that?
Yeah, some sort of like trip insurance for the families.
And whatever it is, I don't.
You're talking financial, physical, both, all of the above?
Yes.
Yeah, we can make sure that we typically, especially if they're going on a long trip, overnight trip, they have to have a safety plan. That's always been part of our process. So we can make sure that she includes that in case, things go bad in Ukraine and, all of a sudden we have to get 25 ISD students home. Like, what's the plan? Or, we have to refund a bunch of money. What's the plan there?
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't care how she solves the problem, but she needs to at least give it some thought.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
In our fundraising, always concerned about the kids that can't write a check. So if there's some fundraising for kids who are in the German program that need help, that would be really also part of the plan.
Yeah, and that's what she has in her letter here, that's why she wants permission now, so they
Yeah.
can start to raise the funds. And I'm sure some kids probably need passports and.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
I'm
that time,
also
yes.
talking about the kids that are, third year German that
Want to go, but
don't want to go,
Can't
but
write the
are,
check.
but they can't write the check. So, community is very supportive of these things. So
Mhm.
reaching out to them for a specific thing would be very useful.
Absolutely. We can, and this is a perfect thing for the foundation now that that's up and running too. That's, if we have any students in need, we'll reach out to them and see if we can get their support.
And the German student population is fairly small. Not like the band.
That's a lot of parts on that trip. Going to Germany, that's a lot
Oh, that's a
of
lot of
parts
work.
of that.
Yeah, and I do applaud Mrs. Glick for doing this. This is
Yeah.
the important stuff, the experiences that the kids never forget. So if there's a way we can support it, I absolutely appreciate that. And
Yeah, I had one child that participated. And it was life-changing.
Did you go to Germany, Tom? or-
Yes, she was in Germany, and she went to Germany. And she had and when she went to college, she had a German minor. Motivated her to study hard.
so you're okay with moving it forward?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Lisa, you're okay with moving it forward?
I don't think does this need to go to the board? I don't
not yet, but she wants permission to send fundraising information home to families and stuff with the anticipation that the board will approve the field trip if she meets all the requirements.
Can we do, so we can approve this, she can go do her stuff.
Yeah, we'll put an agenda item on the board that says that, Mrs. Galecka's class is, has permission to begin fundraising for the trip to be approved at a later date or something like that.
Perfect.
Mike Lehman said he'll be here in 10 to 15 minutes. He had a
Perfect.
momentary delay.
Traffic.
I'll turn it over to Mr. O'Leary because he is here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little further down the road than I think the way Kayla is with the German trip. I do have a little more information. I work with Mr. Saylor, former band director. He's on the other side of it as our trip guide, and he's been great with things like getting that kind of insurance, that kind of things taken care of during COVID time. He's able to help us get that kind of stuff taken care of. He also helps us set up security and all those kind of concerns that we're worried about. Ours isn't across the seas. It's down to Nashville, Pigeon Forge area. If you look at my presentation, like I don't have names yet because we don't know those students. Our boosters are great with providing money to all students and then scholarshiping some trips as much as they can. So we have that part of it in place as well. We've always tried to put a performance component into all of them. It's not just the trip, it's a performance as well. So, we've done the parades at certain places. This time would be almost kind of a competition. It's the Smoky Music Mountain Festival down there with very highly esteemed judges, and it'd be a great opportunity for our students to go down there. I'm trying to work out with Mr. Saylor. I don't know if many folks remember Mr. Esposito was in town several years ago. And he made a point to talk to me, and to this day, I'll never forget some of the conversation that we had, but he always said if we were in the town, in the neighborhood, just to say hello. And so it'd be neat to be able to have a time where we could maybe stop by Warner Brothers and maybe take them up on that favor.
In Nashville?
Yeah. So it'd be kind of a two-part. In fact, Nevin took back the itinerary and he's kind of revising it as we speak. So maybe once he gets back from his boat, he can send me that. But
So when is the trip scheduled?
it's slated for early April.
Of
I believe it's
25.
that first week.
Of 25.
Yes, 25. Sorry. Yeah, 25.
And Jason, that's one point of clarification. We need, the form, I believe, has you leaving and coming home on the same day, which we knew could not happen. Could not happen.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
But,
I'll look at that.
we'll need to
That's
change
fine.
put
Yeah,
a
I'll certainly
return
tweak
date,
that.
whatever that is. And just tell us what it is and we'll make the
Okay,
change.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Save our road costs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
That'd be
Yeah, he's finally
impressive.
figured out time travel.
Yeah, that'd
Did
be
you travel by
impressive.
bus? or plane?
Yes.
Bus?
Yeah, it'd be bus. Yeah, by bus.
So the
Those
kid,
fun bus trips to Florida.
Yeah, our last one was a doozy. We
Oh, really?
earned my hell, yeah. Earned my
broke
stripes
down
on
in
that one.
West Virginia or something.
Broke down in West Virginia, yeah, for most of the day. That
Oh,
was,
my goodness. Remind me to tell you my favorite Nevin story.
sure.
On our trip to
We
Florida.
probably all have one, yeah. At least.
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of doing this closer to home than ballet.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
thought.
it certainly should be somewhat easier to do than that kind of event, so.
Yeah.
You know, and taking the buses, it makes sense, so.
Sure.
Is this for the entire band or is this just for the jazz band?
It's open to the entire marching band right now. There are components that we could send more of our music department if we wanted to do that. We could look into that.
I mean, you mentioned something about there was going to be kind of a festival
Yep.
with some competition and,
Yep.
and, so I was just curious how you would fit into those types of programs.
Sure. Yeah. There's several. There is the jazz component. There's marching band component. They have it all down there, and they have the judges for that. And schools travel there, and they compete, and they get feedback from great. I know one of the judges this year, Dr. Kreider. She did our state festival. She's incredible. So yeah, it'd be a valuable, I think, experience for even those kids if we could open that up. Necessary.
Okay.
I mean, some of the is the cost too. I want to be upfront about that. A charter bus is 55 kids. Well, we don't want 60. That opens up another bus, and then things go this way.
We take 110.
Yeah, right. So we're trying to fill.
Yeah, and my encouragement would be to take as many kids
Yes.
as you possibly can that want to go, that we can afford. My daughter had really great experience on the bus trip,
Sure,
and has had friends that she's kept also for a very long time. So
that's great.
we're going to say, this is a phenomenal opportunity. Tremendous amount of work on your part. It'd be a lot easier to stay home, but the experience the kids get, and you must have done some of the chaperoning to go
Oh,
to
yeah.
Florida with that. Yeah.
10 years, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Florida,
What you
California,
won't do to go to
California.
Florida?
Arizona,
Yeah.
by bus with
By bus
a couple
with
hundred kids.
110 kids.
Let me tell you, that was a good time. Not being allowed to sleep.
I am so jealous.
Yeah, having to sit out in the hall. Jakovich used to make us sit out in the hall late long.
Yeah.
Didn't get, so Mike and I would go to Disney and go in the rides where we could sleep. We could sit and sleep.
How many times did you go through? It's a small world.
Exactly. We just stayed on, just kept going. No, I think it's great.
Cool.
And you're 8 through 12. No, I saw in the proposal, right? You're marching. band,
Yeah, we have a few
8
eighth
through
graders.
12?
Yeah, in there now. So
You've always had a few eighth graders that were
Correct.
ready to move up.
correct. Yeah. So
So
the band's
that's-
gotten bigger this year too. So
Yeah, that's no different than what people on the eighth grade task.
yeah, we've had some kids really want to.
Yeah,
Jump in there.
My daughter was one.
Oh, okay.
She was tall for her age. She put the chicken thing on. And
Yeah,
she
yeah,
was fine.
yeah.
My son was there for the first day today and he came home very excited and positive.
Yeah, he did. He's great. Yeah. I had a lot of good things to say today.
Was
so.
this the band camp first day?
Today was first day, yeah.
First
Today was
day,
first day.
okay.
So
He was nervous because he's 8th grade.
I was nervous. I woke up way early this morning ready to go. So I was ready.
Do you still do the punishment for showing up late?
What's the punishment for showing late? They have to
When
walk
when my daughter was there, okay, if the whole band wasn't there, they marched in place until
Yeah.
everybody showed up.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Only one day, okay, until everybody figured out. And the great thing about that is that instantaneously you taught her to be ahead of time.
Yeah.
Okay, and to this day, she.
Well, they were all on time today. They were ready.
Right.
To go, so.
But you don't wanna be
But I'll
early.
make sure I'll say that. Mr. Harley said we did.
Nobody complained, okay, but I bet you the kid that showed up 10 minutes late, you never did it again.
So, when I was in high school, our band director, we had to run a lap for every minute we were
Oh,
late.
yeah.
Just you,
No, not anybody that was late.
okay.
Yeah, but just the person that was
Yeah,
late had,
okay.
like, if I was 10 minutes late, I had to run 10 laps,
What-
not the whole band.
I assume it was Sailor. Okay, what he did was he didn't punish the whole band. This is just the rule. Okay, and the peer pressure on that was just phenomenal.
Yeah. Now I think it's just the embarrassment of just walking on the field last. That's like playing out to have everybody kind of talking on you. But kids have been squared away today. It was a really great first day. So
Good.
Okay, well, good.
Excited.
Good.
I think we're good with the.
Put it on the agenda?
All right, we'll make that correction on the date and we'll put it on the agenda.
wait, do you want me to talk real fast about it again while I'm here?
Yeah, if there's time, Jason and Julianne Laird, 2 years ago, put together the idea proposal for audio
Media production.
media production
Oh, yeah,
class, a sound studio, and it's gonna happen this year.
Happen.
So Jason, I asked Jason, will you just give a quick update
Yeah.
on its progress?
Yeah, it's funny. It ties in a little bit to Mr. Esposito being here, things like that, and having those students. But we gave me the opportunity a couple years ago to that Tri-County workforce. And from that, this kind of all evolved. And I walked in the other day, and guys have done a great job with, HVAC and getting the walls and things ready to go. I know Randy and the guys are working to get the equipment in there, but last I looked, the class is full now. So
That's awesome.
yeah, I'm really excited to get that involved. You probably know that Eric has the digital media side of it, so that kind of is it. This is the audio side of things. So kids that are, for all the Pro Tools and all the very cool things that are out there now for audio classes, interfaces, DAWs, and recording. I mean, it's a wide thing for students. So I'm pumped to see
That's called the
Jason,
media audio production.
audio media production. I was playing off the word amp as an amplifier and DMP. Yeah, I thought it'd be clever.
On that note,
But all of us didn't catch it.
Jason had mentioned a few years ago, teachers in the senior high school applied for educator in the workforce grants, and he traveled to different sound studios.
Oh,
nice. Yeah.
To get an idea, researched, and came back with, hey, I'd like to have a music studio. And I think its appeal is phenomenal. It certainly enriches students' learning in music who have been in it for some time, but it will also attract students who have an interest in music but didn't follow that path.
I keep saying if you've been to high school for any period, you'll notice instantly a lot of them had headphones on. Like instantly, there's headphones on everybody. And so, yeah, I've been seeing a lot of students who weren't typically in music classes already taking advantage of that. So that should be,
Are you teaching the class?
yes. Yeah. So,
And I can say I would have been one of those students. I never was classically trained, but I definitely love music. And,
Yeah.
being able to produce your own music at that age has been exciting.
yeah. And a part of it too is, the lab side of it. I think it's important for kids to know how to play a chord or two on a guitar and know how to record that kind of stuff and be able to, sing a campfire song or, do those kinds of things. So that there's going to be that kind of tie to it too is, some of those tied instruments, I guess, more or less would be part of it. So,
But you're also gonna get some technological nerds
yeah.
that are just fascinated with the technology. And that's also a way to, living in music is to produce it.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had kids talk to me about podcasting and business side of things. I mean, jingle writing too. It's not just the music side of it too. There's a lot of kids that have been asking.
Because they're just not the performance side to it.
Sure.
Yeah,
Right.
So
Yes.
this is a whole
Correct.
nother animal, but
Project based. Yeah.
a whole different group of kids that could be interested in pursuing it.
Yeah.
So great. I'm excited to see what comes out of it.
Likewise. Thank you. Next week.
Anything else?
Anything else for Mr. O'Leary?
Appreciate it.
Go home and sleep.
I'm gonna go shower.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, yeah, you're in band camp. Thank you. so
Thanks,
much.
everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks for all you do.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Back up to number 2 now that Mr. Lake is
Yeah, I
here.
apologize for my tardiness. I got my times mixed up. In June, I had the opportunity to go to IUP for 3 days where they had a teacher workshop focusing on drone technology and aerospace programs. And this particular program focused mostly on drones and what's happening in Indiana County and the surrounding counties with that technology, along with what's going on at IUP. Part of the program was a boot camp on how to get professionally licensed to fly drones. One of the things you need to do in order to get paid to fly is to basically hold a pilot certificate. Not that difficult to do. And probably in the 3 days that we were there, it got us about 65, 70% of the way there. Indiana was well represented. We did have 6 teachers at that program, along with teachers from Altoona, River Valley, Avonworth, which is in Pittsburgh, Purchase Line. I think there was somebody from Marion Center. So a lot of schools from the region and outside of the area as well. besides being kind of exposed to, the nuts and bolts of, that type of a program, what became very apparent quickly was a lot of schools are doing these types of programs. One of the things that they talk a lot about, and I'm certainly no expert on this, there are others, Dr. Benhart could certainly speak to this, and as well as Dr. Knowlton, who's he's the president of Arion. I'm not even sure what their second, Arion Aeronautics or something like that. They're a program that is focusing on training for the aerospace industry. They talked about the opportunities for students. At a low level, it would be getting what's called the Part 107 licensure, which allows students to make money while flying drones. Once they get that, they could leave high school. So it is a federal certificate where they could open their own business. They could go work for a construction company and in addition to what other duties they have, they could fly drones for site surveys, inspections, things like that. So there are lots of opportunities for students, if we're only talking about drone programs, to go out right out of school and get jobs doing it. The numbers for growth are astronomical because right now it's so early on in a commercial application. Everything from taking pictures from real estate, which is kind of the low end of drone technology, to doing research. That's one of the things that IUP is doing is Dr. Benhart kind of fell into this in that he was using drones as a tool to do his research. And then he got very involved in drone programs and creating curriculum and things like that. So IUP has a certificate that you can get that not only teaches Part 107, but also teaches all the instrumentation, flying drones and things like that. So it's like the practical side as well as kind of the licensure side. One of the things that they just did through an agreement with their staff was if a student comes to them with the FAA certification, Part 107, they will grant that student 3 credits. So they will give them 3 college credits, and then they can come into the Geographic Information Systems program, and they can just take the drone certification program, which would be 3 more courses, or they can incorporate that into a larger bachelor's program. So, my wheels start turning. What can we do to offer our students? Because, it's not just students who are interested in robotics. It's not just students who are interested in just flying drones to take pictures. Like there's a whole lot of things that students can do. From our high level students and who are like our high academic achievers to students who are more career focused, there's lots of opportunities for them to be exposed to using this platform to do something other than goof around.
The building code requires a building, I believe it's 14 stories, it may be 10, to be inspected every 3 years.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is with a drone. So,
Yeah.
so a guy who's going to structural engineering or architecture, having a license every 3 years, every building in downtown Pittsburgh has to be inspected to make sure it's not falling apart from the outside.
Yeah, and from a safety standpoint, I'm sure that in the past they've had to put somebody on a rope and they rappel down the side of the building and they look at the structure.
Yeah, well, and you're rappelling down a building that has a loose cornice.
Right.
Okay, so some of these old masonry buildings have these big cornices out there. They want those inspected
Well,
every 3 years.
Yeah, and they're inspecting like the towers, when Homer City was, I'm sure they still have to have them inspected because the smokestacks down there they can't fall, right? So they're inspecting those, they're inspecting radio towers, they're inspecting windmills, right? Anything that needs bridges, right? It's a lot cheaper to get a guy out there with his drone and he flies around, he has points of inspection that he looks at. So he's out there for a day versus bringing a truck in and those types of things. So,
Well, yeah, they used to take the truck and they used to take
Yep.
everything underneath.
yep, the guy's hanging
So
underneath.
they're going to couple the drone technology with the scanning technology. And so, so they'll be able to fly into the bridge and do a 3-dimensional model
Yep.
of this thing.
Yep.
It's going to be really technical.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Even more interesting is, so the Indiana County and a couple of the surrounding counties have a special exemption from the federal government to fly drones non-line of sight. So one of the rules right now is if you're flying a drone for any reason, commercial or not, you have to be able to see it. They've granted this exemption in our area to do research to make drones more autonomous. One of the things that they talk about is called drone in a box. So let's say you have a big power company or a refinery or something, and you wanted to go around and look at specific points every hour. So the drone in a box, the box opens up, the drone flies out, it flies autonomously around. You might have one or two people there who are responsible for kind of keeping track of them, but they don't need to see the drones at all times. So they're not, so Dr. Benhart is very much involved in that. I know MIT is coming in and they're interested in using our airspace, and therefore IUP. I think, corporations are going to be coming in and setting up shop here because they're going to be able to build and test their programs in our area as well. So, we've kind of got this piece where kids could go out and do something in career-wise, they could incorporate it into their bachelor's degree, and the industry is going to be coming to this region. Is that something we should prepare our students for? Probably, right? As far as where Indiana is, we're just having these discussions, the initial discussions. I've been kind of looking at this for the last couple of years. Very informal discussions with Mr. McElhaney. I've talked to a lot of different people in and around the programs that are operating. What I can tell you is we're kind of behind. Purchase Line's got a little program. Homer City was there. They have a program. And I don't know that they're full-blown programs, but they're using drone technology to do some interesting things. And then you jump to someplace like Altoona and River Valley, and they're creating entire programs, not just on drones, but on aircraft mechanics and things like that. So they're really, this whole idea of aerospace in the high school setting and as a career, it's kind of I feel like it's kind of a thing that's happening. So, on one hand, I'm just here, hey, we did this really cool thing, and, it's something that I think we should be pursuing. If you want to consider that other schools in the area are already doing programs like this, that is something that we should be considering. Are we doing what we can for our students across the board, introducing them to new types of technology?
So on the 107 license, is there any minimum age
So 16 is the minimum age
to get the 107?
to get the 107. Now, that doesn't mean students can't fly drones.
Correct.
They just can't get paid to fly drones.
So they could take a class in ninth grade to get licensed
So-
to fly at 16.
So this
They
is,
could. They can't take the test until they're 16. So it probably wouldn't make sense for them to do it in ninth grade. But, one of the things that
I would have
myself,
done it in ninth grade.
well, there are a group of students at the high school that are flying drones, I believe, and I don't know them. I happened to sit in on a lunch and learn with Dr. Benhart, and there was a group of students in there. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't, and they were knowledgeable, right? So we have this group of students kind of already that's moving around in the school that are, we always have that group. You just don't know who they are, perhaps, because it's a hobby, and they don't maybe, if you don't talk to them about it or ask them that question. But, we have kind of like a little group there already that kind of know what's going on,
so the big airplane certifications from the FAA usually require a written, an oral, and a flight demonstration.
Correct.
Is the 107 structured the same?
So it covers the same written material plus drone regulations as a private pilot's license. There's no requirement for additional hands-on training. Now, that's where IUP says, listen, we shouldn't really be sending people out without some hands-on training, right? And I do have a private pilot's license, so that's kind of my background in addition to being a mechanical engineer prior to being a physics teacher. So I have a pretty good background both on the pilot side and pretty good understanding of what's going on on the drone side. We could offer something that trained kids for the written part and incorporated some hands-on stuff, whether that be through us or in a partnership through IUP.
So the reason I asked was, I agree with you that it doesn't do a lot of good to try to get a 15-year-old ready to take the written if they can't really test it or actually do it
Correct.
till they're 16. But if there was that where they needed some stick time,
Yeah.
then I think that's a perfect opportunity. And I agree with IUP. There should be some background in actual demonstration of the skills to actually fly the darn thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, my background, Mike, is I was flying model airplanes, radio controlled, which was the predecessor to this whole drone thing when I was in high school. And I flew them off and on basically my whole life. I also have a commercial license with instrument and multi-engine rating, so I'm very familiar with this. But my point is that I think if the kids can go out, even if they're not 16, and you set your program up so that they can actually go out and fly this stuff and practice it.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the issues with line of sight is, so when the airplane is flying away from me, right is right and left is left. But when the airplane turns around and comes back to me, it's just the opposite. If I want the airplane to go to my right, I turn the stick left so that the airplane.
Yeah, and they actually had us out during this class, and we were in a parking lot and we were flying away from us. They had us fly a circuit, and they would have us fly. You would have to fly back towards you. Drones, you know, when we think of drones, we think of the quadricopters, right? Those 4 propellered things. But, you know, those can only do so much, and they're actually moving back into a fixed wing platform to cover more ground more quickly. So, you know, those planes that you were flying, you know,
They have a
you were-
basement full of them.
Right. So these are a little more,
Crashed.
these are a little more technologically advanced. They're running on batteries still. But, you know, the premise isn't all that different. They've got a very interesting drone over at IUP that's a fixed wing drone. It takes off vertically and lands vertically, but it goes up, it flips over, and it takes off. And they've done survey of crops. So they can look at crops with the infrared cameras that they have on the instrumentation, and they can see what's dry, what's wet, what needs fertilizer, what's good. They surveyed White's Woods from a forestry aspect this spring, and they were looking at the red barberry because it leaves out before everything else. And so they were mapping the concentrations of the barberry because it's an invasive species. They can do surveys of forestry surveys, you know, from the tops, just looking at the treetops and looking at colors and things. So there's, you know,
That's my background.
yeah, and I know there's a lot of tie-in to, you know, agriculture, forestry, construction, real estate, like you name it, like anything that needs to be
So-
observed.
What does a drone program look like then?
So, I mean, I think it can look like a lot of things.
What is your gonna look?
So-
What do you wanna do?
I think the entry-level drone program would look like a 1-semester course where the first semester focuses on,
First semester or
first 9 weeks-ish, focuses on prepping to take the test. My understanding is that if you have no knowledge prior to taking the test, you need about 40 hours of instruction time to prep for it. So that 9-week time frame kind of gets us there. After that, then you can, and I'm kind of compartmentalizing it because some of this stuff can happen at the same time because you don't want the class to be too boring. So let's just say we have 9 weeks of instructional time that focuses on the Part 107, and then we've got the other time that focuses on, you know, flight operations, maybe some historical stuff. We could do, you know, you want to look at the physics of how this thing works. Maybe you could look at drone repair. Like you could do a lot of different little interesting things. We could do, I know Dr. Benhart is and IUP are receptive to us going over and using their drones. And I'm sure we could go out and do field work. They have lots of projects where their own students go out. Somebody calls from the community and says, hey, I need I need to look at the creek that's on my farm. I want to look at the erosion, and we want to decide where we want to plant some willows or something that's going to, prevent erosion or something. So, they go out. So there's opportunities for students to do actual projects in the community where they get hands-on experience. And I think, that to me is like the nascent beginning of it, because it's something that we can do pretty quickly and pretty inexpensively from an infrastructure standpoint. And then the question is, well, where do we go from that? Are we happy with that? Or do we look at something like the AOPA, right, has an entire curriculum that it's crazy. It starts in 9th grade. It might even start in 8th grade and goes through 12th grade. And it can focus on drones. It can focus on private pilot. It focuses on aircraft mechanics. Like it can go about as far as you want to take it from that one little piece. So like I said, my initial goal would be, hey, let's get these kids Part 107 certified. They get 3 credits at IUP when they walk in the door. If they want to start their own little business, perhaps they could, taking real estate pictures or taking pictures, doing photography at weddings. Who knows, right? That would be kind of like the beginning offering at the school.
So to follow up on that, so you have the AOP, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association is what the AOPA stands for. So you have that kind of Cadillac.
Yeah, it's free.
Okay.
So it's a free curriculum, and
So-
you can kind of take the pieces. Like if hey, we only want to do this bit, we do this bit. Hey, we want to do the whole thing, and you can do that.
So Mike, that's kind of going to where I was trying to get at, Mike. Is there something in between just offering a 1 semester 107 ride versus the full-blown
Yeah.
4-year program?
Absolutely, I think you can do something in between, and those are talks that you would want to have with Glenn Ponis, who's the AOPA guy, he's in charge of the curriculum development and rollout. Those would be things like, hey, this is the piece that we want. We want to offer these courses, and it's my understanding that that's absolutely a possibility. I think they understand that what they're offering is gonna it would be very labor intensive, and you'd really have to be fully committed. Like you'd have to have multiple staff members and just to offer all the courses.
Well, the other part of this is coordinating with IUP. If IUP is putting together a program, it would seem to me that what we would want to do would be to offer however many, that would set our students up to transition to IUP
Yeah.
to finish and complete that program.
Yeah, and that Part 107 licensure is that step for them. So
They don't
they don't need anything else.
Okay.
So their first course,
Don't we have a course with
Beaver County.
Beaver County Aviation?
We have a partnership with them. We do have some courses that will count toward credits to their aeronautic program, yes.
Yeah,
But
so-
this would
so we also
partner,
could-
this would go
Yeah, we could interface that. with
dovetail
this too.
perfectly with this. yeah.
and St. Francis has a program as well. And do we have some agreement? Do we have an agreement
We
with
have,
St. Francis?
we have agreement.
Not with St. Francis currently, but we're working on it. especially
Yeah,
with
so
this.
there would maybe be an opportunity, but the here and now is IUP is like, yeah, you come with the Part 107, we're gonna give you 3 credits because that's a federally recognized certification. And
And it's a prepackaged curriculum, so we could get this off
yeah,
the ground. so
yeah,
to
from
speak.
AOPA, we could get it off the ground very, very quickly. But I have enough knowledge in weather, map reading, the law, and it's not that difficult to kind of put together a course to teach that piece.
Do you have a CFI?
I do not.
So,
Absent the day they taught that acronym.
pardon?
Pretend we were all absent the day they taught that.
Certified flight
There
instructor.
you go.
Okay. Yeah, my apologies. So you said the 107 is the basic what IUP needs. Is there anything else they would like to see from our students before they entered their program?
Not from, this is all new. So this, them accepting the Part 107 just happened this spring. It's something that we talked about probably last summer. They had a meeting and they had some teachers, and I think Mr. Heinrich, were you there or was Mr. Zahorchik there?
For the one at
That-
IUP last year, it was
yeah.
me. That
Was
was
you? So we were talking about, well, hey, how do we kind of, what's this going to look like? How do we want the high schools to be integrated, or feeding, that program at IUP? And one of the things that we said was, we really think that you're going to get more students involved in this if we're teaching some basic class in the high schools.
Mhm.
And then, so if I get 20 kids to sign up, maybe 10 kids go and finish, or 5 kids, versus a dual enrollment situation, you might get 1 or 2 kids, maybe.
So there's a flying club or an aviation club at the high school.
There is.
Okay. Have you integrated that? Because right there, you've got some people that have a natural interest in this.
That would be a target group if you were to offer a course. I'm not the advisor from that. Mr. Murphy is, and then I can't remember the gentleman's name.
Nathaniel Arthur.
Mr. Arthur's is he's the aviation guy, right? That's not my club. I do know those kids. I'm the science club advisor, one of them. Some of our science club kids are in the aviation club or have been in the past. So I'm aware of it. It would be, that would definitely be a group of kids that would probably be interested in it.
So this would be an elective?
Yeah.
Is it-
Can we,
So the other side of it would be, could it also be a club activity to help get it kind of off the ground? My point is that how many people would sign up for it as an elective? And if they've got a tight schedule, is there an outlet to,
There could be.
Might be hard to get those hours in though.
Yeah, and
If
that's
they
the
need
thing.
to-
So we're only meeting once a week for, what's our club period? 39 minutes, 40 minutes?
Yeah.
So we're meeting once a week for 40 minutes. If I abandon my other advisors in science club, they might find me in a shallow hole somewhere. But if I took one, if I said, hey, listen, I'll do it every other week, I just don't think there would be enough instructional time.
Okay.
Now, if we had a class and we had kids certified, then we say, hey, let's do this club thing, because then maybe we can do, maybe we can photograph football games, or we can, that club then could practice the skills that you learn in class once they have.
That makes more sense.
So that would be kind of maybe a follow-on.
why don't we ask for you to write a proposal and for the elective and see where it goes?
I mean, shouldn't be, if I understand it correctly, it's kind of a prepackaged thing, right?
Yeah,
It's-
the AOPA is a prepackaged thing. The FAA has a
So-
study guide / book with all the materials that you need to study it. So
So it shouldn't be too heavy of a lift.
from a curriculum side, it's not going to be a heavy lift.
So-
One of the things that you would have to consider as a board or a committee would be, we need drone policy. Because right now, we don't have a drone policy.
Yeah,
We'll just lean on the PSBA to write that.
I'm sure, you know what, I'm sure they have one. Someone
I'm
has
sure
to
they
have
do.
one. yeah.
So IUP has a policy, and I apologize, I didn't send it to you, Mr. Heinrich. They have a policy. It's like 3 pages, and it spells out who can fly, when you can fly, who you need to notify when you fly, what you can fly. Like it spells it out. One of their things was they have to notify the IUP police whenever they're going to be flying the drone. So clearly we want to notify.
We notify the AP police
so
in case it gets away from us.
So given that you've sort of stepped into this as the quote unquote volunteer to start this program, and that your curriculum is basically canned one way or the other, whether it's FAA or
Yeah, if you're going for the certification, it would be.
AOPA, okay? So is this something that in September or August the 22nd, the first day of class, you're gonna have this, or is this January, or is this next summer?
Our classes are set up.
There's a lot.
Just from a
barriers.
Could I do it? If you said, listen, we want you to teach this class, here's the spot in your schedule, we've got kids enrolled, could I do it? Yes. My preference would be, let's write the proposal, let's go through the process.
Well, I'm
let's get it-
I'm trying to take off on Tom here and be a little bit pushy about it, okay? take that away from him for once. But I guess the real question I'm asking is, what is your realistic timeline when this thing would actually start teaching students?
I think the realistic timeline would be next fall, not this coming fall, but, go through the
But it
process,
might be, yeah.
get things approved in January or whenever,
November.
we normally approve new classes.
November.
November, so we could have a course proposal, we could have a syllabus, we could have all that stuff kind of laid out and have it presented to the board.
It might be
in
a
November.
better spring class, because you're gonna do the instruction first, and then you're gonna have the hands-on.
Yeah.
So you might wanna do that when the weather's a little bit better.
It's Western PA. who
Yeah.
knows?
I know the weather in June's better than it is in
It is.
In
It is.
January.
It is.
Now, Mike has created a great problem. He's our only physics teacher. And his schedule is very full with physics classes and students this year. Mike and I were talking, he feels that the demand for the AP physics classes has an ebb and flow to it. So perhaps next year there would be room in his schedule to do that.
Yeah, and I do think there would be. This year is an exceptional year. We've got 3 sections of AP Physics.
Wow.
Normally we have,
Good for you.
yeah, normally we'll have 1 section of AP Physics 1, 1 section of AP Physics 2, or 2 sections of AP Physics 1. So it kind of goes, so 3 is unusual.
Normally.
Yeah, that is unusual. And then we'll have a couple sections of regular physics.
It shows the success of the science.
Absolutely. Oh, they're top notch. There's no, well, I've actually charged them all with developing a clone program too, because if we don't clone Mr. Lehman soon, we're gonna run out of physics teachers. in
Clone
those
and draw.
days. They only issued 4 certifications last year in the state of Pennsylvania
In physics.
in physics.
Holy smokes.
That's the entire state. So, people like Mike are very, very rare people. So, that's why his schedule is packed. And to really do this right, and where this could go, this could become very similar to what we're talking about with the Family Consumer Science program, that childcare program. It could become a SIP coded program that we partner with IUP and the Jimmy Stewart Airport, and we're putting kids through a whole variety of things. I don't know if it'll grow to something that ICTC takes over, but I think the drone program at first is the lowest hanging fruit here. I think
Yeah.
that's a great place to start.
And it is nice because it does fit, I think it fits a wide range of students. So if an ICTC program, our AP kids wouldn't be able to take it because they're not going to go. They're going to stay. They're going to be academic. They're going to be focused, right? And so you'll catch some kids, but the diversity of students who could take the class is kind of what makes it attractive. We're always talking about, we have all these great courses for our high flyers, our AP kids. How many can we develop courses that appeal to a broader spectrum of students? And I think this would kind of fit the bill. Now, if you went down the pathway of, hey, we want to do an aircraft mechanics program, that probably fits more the bill of an ICTC type program where, you bring in some instructors and, you're working on engines and things like that, although that would be fun.
This also would
Like this-
interface with digital marketing.
Yeah, you could do,
With that.
absolutely. And that's what some schools are doing. Like sometimes the school is like, the teacher that teaches, the media course, he starts playing around with drones, right? And then it kind of turns into something, all on its own. So some of these schools have been intentional in developing programs, and some of the schools, the guy just, he buys one on the side and they start playing around with it, and then all of a sudden they realize, hey, this is kind of a thing.
And you get a lot of students reacting to it
Yeah.
for all sorts of reasons.
Right.
Like, are there any guidelines as far as class size if you're preparing students for this type of certification? Is there,
I don't
it doesn't
think so.
matter?
Nobody wants to have 45 kids. But, you can imagine
A normal class size.
a normal
25
class
would be-
size. Now, one of the dangers is, and, it's like, if you've ever coached a youth sport, you don't want kids standing around.
Right.
Right. So when it comes to that hands-on part, bigger class sizes would be tricky because,
Well,
I'm
I'm surprised they don't have a cap on for
Yeah.
for safety factors
well,
too, really.
the Part 107 doesn't require any hands-on,
Not at all.
none at all.
Oh,
Right. So that's where we'd have to figure out, like, so I'm Part 107 certified. I'm the pilot in charge.
PIC. pilot
Yep, I'm the
command.
pilot in command, right, or pilot in charge, whatever you want to call it. I'm the guy who's responsible, but I can hand you the controls. And that happens all the time. Students younger than 16 fly planes all the time, but they've got a pilot in command with them. They're the responsible party, right? So if I'm the only teacher, I wouldn't want to take 30 kids out and have one kid flying the drone. And I can't have more than one drone up at a time. So we have to figure out, like, what does that look like? Maybe it looks like, well, they do that too.
No, you could have more than one up, but you have to have different frequencies and it's
And you
more
have to have
complicated.
another pilot in command.
Correct.
Yeah. So, there's some things like
So
that. Maybe you do it like
After I pass my test though, then I'm a pilot in command.
you are. So you could then,
How easy is this? You pass your test, you get to fly.
yeah, what you could do is if you, let's say, 1 year students get their Part 107, you could say, well, hey, I need somebody to help out.
Oh,
Maybe you could
Even
get
better,
get an intern student who would say, hey, yeah,
I want to do some
Wade,
more of
Wade
this.
did a great job. We had a great report. He's very responsible. Maybe, we have something in our guidelines that say, hey, yes, we can have an intern student who's meets qualifications. to
Or
help
5
out.
intern students.
But do you know, does IUP allow dual enrollment for that particular program?
I am,
When it's offered or anything, if kids will be able to take it here like in 10th grade and then start actually into the program at IUP, is that?
I think as long as you have your Part 107, does IUP restrict what students can dual enroll in, or can they take anything as long as they
They can
can take
take-
credentials?
They can take whatever it is, as long as they can
Yeah.
fit in there.
As long as it
As
fits
long as they
their
qualify
schedule
for the
and-
course and
Yeah,
it fits
so I
in their
think
schedule.
if you get your Part 107 and you say, hey, I want to just get the certificate, because the certificate is just 4 courses.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. They
Yeah.
could almost have that by the
So
time
they
they graduate.
could, by the time they graduate, and the way they have the certificate program set up is it's a fall spring. So if you really wanted to go after it, you could do two, you could come in with your Part 107, you could take 1 or 2 courses in the fall, you could take 1 course in the spring, and you could come out with their drone certificate.
And that does require some flight time.
That requires flight time, because they do flight time, they look at instrumentation. So for us, the probably if we bought some drones to fly, the best instrumentation we would have would maybe be an infrared camera, right? So we'd have a regular camera, we'd have an infrared camera. They have all kinds of things that they hang on their drones, magnetometers, gas detectors, they have all kinds of things that they're playing around with all the time.
What's a drone cost?
So it depends.
Like what you would,
So probably something for a classroom instruction situation, about $800 will get you the package of the drone, 3 batteries, a controller with a built-in screen, I think they have chargers, stuff like that.
I bet there's
And then
grants out there that could,
Well, we already know that we can probably write a grant to Vesper Energy, probably get $5,000 to $10,000 from them to get 3 or 4 regular drones, and then maybe get a nicer drone with an infrared camera on it. Because part of the IUP program is also doing image analysis. So they take all this imagery and they put it together. So that would kind of be the next step too. Like, hey, let's, we got some extra time. Maybe we do some stuff where we're, doing some other analysis on the topic.
and even the NEA grants, do they still have those grants for teachers?
I'm not sure.
They had a learning and leadership grant and then they had, I can't remember what the other one was called, that you could get money for
And
things
that
for.
area
development of
corporation would be
curriculum.
like, if there were grants other than kind of these Vesper Energy grants that we know of, like are just a grant for anything, I'm sure those guys are gonna know, hey, yeah, we can get you a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. I know River Valley is getting $100,000 flight simulator from Build Back Better money because they somehow partnered with the Jimmy Stewart Airport.
They did.
Yes. So Jimmy Stewart Airport's getting a simulator, and Jimmy Stewart is giving River Valley a simulator, flight simulator. So that will fly both drones and aircraft.
I'll have to talk to my brother-in-law.
That's what I was told at this meeting. So, and that was from the instructor who's setting up the program.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'll verify that.
Right, well,
And it's also my understanding that one of the simulator businesses in town is buying one of these. like the golf simulator places. One of them is buying one as well. So they're around and available, and maybe Jimmy Stewart would be like, yeah, come over, we'll give you flight time if we wanted to do,
I know
do
that
some
they,
drone
I know that
simulation.
they are trying to get a flight simulator for their flight school that they have there. Although you could do some basic aviation there, as you know, they're primarily for instrument
Right.
qualifications. Because you can do that in a simulator very, very easily. I'll find out.
Yeah,
On a side note, the industry recognized certificate lines well with our evidence-based graduation pathway. It's one of the factors that can help students demonstrate proficiency for graduation.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I do too. Thank you.
So,
thanks for.
Do we need to do anything on the board?
well, I think there's a couple of things you probably need to direct us to do, which would be, one, we need to write that drone
Write that
policy and get that approved.
And the proposal for the class.
A proposal for the course. I think we also, you should write a grant proposal. Justin should write a grant proposal. I'll write a grant proposal to see if we can stock this class with the Vesper Energy money that, they have available. And then come
Why don't we
back to
just put
you,
it on the board? I'll just give it as part of my
report that,
report from this.
We
And
don't,
I
we
say
don't-
that
we
we-
don't need a motion.
no, I don't think
I
there's a
don't think
motion.
so,
I
not
think
until the
just,
course actually
And I,
comes.
and I think, it wouldn't hurt at some point to have, Dr. Knowlton from Arion and perhaps AOPA, I'm not certain, like that might be farther down the road. But he's or Dr. Benhart at IUP, if anybody needs any kind of convincing on how important it is that we do that, those guys have all the information.
So-
They've got the
Yeah.
data and how many jobs there's gonna be and what the salaries are and kind of like give us like,
So
Well,
so
hopefully
Robin
anybody that's
Gorman,
living in this century realizes it's an important.
Well, if you got caught in
You have to
that
be- you have to be living in a
2025.
cave if you don't know that this is something that we should be
So-
doing.
so Commissioner Robin
The US
Gorman
University Bank.
had set up a teleconference with some people with the AOPA. This was 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay, in which they were, the AOPA is trying to expand the pilot pool. There's not enough people really going into aviation, whether it's the pilots or the mechanics or the support staff. And so they were trying to expand and attract more younger people into it. And we did talk to that, there was and I don't remember the fellow's name from the AOPA that was on there. And there
It
were
could have
some
been
people from the
Glenn
air.
Thomas.
It was.
What's that?
It was Glenn.
Glenn Fonus, he's the head of their, he's driving that.
There were some people from the airport. There was some of the people from the district. The county commissioners were there. There may have been some from the airport. But anyway, so we've sort of at least been in preliminary contact with the AOPA folks that there's an interest in Indiana for something.
Yeah.
Aviation wise, whatever it may be.
And they do some interesting things for teachers that are, teaching more of the pilot side of it. They'll give scholarships to teachers that go get their pilot's license. So they're doing some, they are very progressive in they're trying to move this ball forward. They're very interested in it. And a little bit self-serving. They are the AOPA, right? They're trying to build their membership, but they realized, we need aircraft mechanics, we need pilots, we need people who are ground certified, we need air traffic controllers. We need it all.
Mhm. And just to let you know, Justin did reach out to Dr. Knowlton and Dr. Bernard and invite them to this meeting. Neither of them could come. We have a meeting, I believe, August 28th, which you'll be getting an invite to.
30th, but yeah.
Was it the 30th? I can't remember. But there's a meeting coming up with those gentlemen that we can learn more about this, and we'll bring it back to you. But I think from this meeting, I think we direct Mike to start working on the curriculum with Justin. We start writing drone grant proposals, and we start writing a policy or find a policy that makes sense for the drone.
If you think IUPs is.
I have the electronic copy. I had the meeting at IUP. I went on vacation, then I came back. you before. I guess I met with you after vacation, and it's just kind of been a whirlwind. So I apologize. I didn't get it sent to you. I do have
That's
an
all right.
electronic copy of the
Don't
IEP.
mind, that'd be great.
And then I will send it to
Yeah,
you.
there's no use
Oh,
rewriting a policy.
Yeah, I think there's, Dr. Benhart was very happy with it. I think, IUP, because they have a no drone policy on campus as well, except for Dr. Benhart and his program, so that they're able to practice what they need to practice, and they do some flying. They'll leave the class. When we went out and flew, he called the IUP police, said, hey, I'm going out, we're gonna fly, this is where we're gonna be. And then we went out and did it. So nobody else is allowed to fly on campus. And I would think we would want a similar situation. Hey, these are the people who are approved to fly for these purposes. Like, you don't want these things just buzzing around all over the place.
Comm Media
Many
used to be
reasons.
able to fly. Are they not able to fly anymore?
What's that?
Comm Media used to be allowed to fly. I wonder if they're not allowed anymore.
Ours or,
Comm Media at IUP.
oh, I don't know.
They used to be.
I don't know. Maybe they're incorporated into that policy. Dr.
Maybe.
Benhart didn't really talk about that side.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks
It's
for
really
listening. I appreciate
interesting, and it's definitely long overdue.
I think it's gonna freshen up our programs a little bit, and, there's a nice science side to it too. We got,
Oh.
I'm Earth and Space
Absolutely.
certified as well, so there's weather in this, there's map reading in it, because you have to be, if you've looked at aeronautic maps, they're a mess. So just figuring those things out, it's a great skill to have, and those types of things.
I saw a professional drone pilot coming behind a batter, and as she swung and hit the ball, chased the ball out of the, he
Yeah.
flew, he at night out at altitude with the lights on,
Wow.
came in, flew through the strike zone after the ball left the bat. Okay, it was unbelievable. Okay, and chased the ball all the way out to it landed. Okay.
So they can do some really, really
Yeah,
neat
and
things.
it was for a sports promotion. Okay,
Yeah.
And he spent 4 hours getting that shot right.
Trying to get the shot, I'm sure,
Get
because the
the
ball
timing
has to
right.
be hit right.
Yeah, well, the grass actually hit the ball.
Yeah.
Okay, or the drone's gonna take the ball.
Yeah.
So it was really, and he did it out at altitude because it's an old fashioned stadium and it had lights.
Yeah.
So it was really, so that ball, and that green ball, like, it looked like neon. It was
I'm
flying
sure.
out, Yeah.
We're gonna need to move on.
All right,
So
great,
thank
thank you
you.
very much, I'll
Thank
get
you
out
so
of here, appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for doing that. I wanted to point out that Mike
Absolutely.
did a lot of this on his own. Like, he just volunteered and he's been leading the charge. So thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Number 5 on the agenda, behavioral support paraprofessional through Silver Lining.
Yeah, on a much less interesting note, I'm seeking approval for up to 3 paraprofessionals. They're technically behavioral support paraprofessionals through Silver Lining. It would be a continuation of services from last year. The way I use them is they're kind of a last resort situation. We always try to hire our own in-house. Right now, I have 2 names coming to you next week for hiring as paraprofessionals. So I'm hopeful that I may only need 1 Silver Lining staff. But the way paraprofessionals turn over, it's nice to have these on, just in case kind of situation.
So we use them already.
Yes.
We have used them for a couple of years now. And it's only when we have to have someone in there to maintain the student's IEP and make sure that they're getting what they need.
And are these are people they actually sit in the room with the student too?
Yeah.
They're actually with
They're in the classroom.
And my only thoughts were when I read through this, it sounds like a lot of the things that the school psychologists are to do too. Is it when it said about data or are you talking about individual student data when you talk about them?
It's
Collect
typically
data from
individual-
multiple sources such as observations, interviews, assessments, functional behavior analysis.
individual student data.
Okay. And our school psychologists don't do that. They don't collect.
They do when there's a reevaluation or evaluation, they do. But this is like daily plans, for recording for progress monitoring and IEPs. So it's a little different.
It looked like a lot of money. So you're saying you may not need
I'm gonna do everything I can to not
you're
use
saying
them.
up to 200,000.
Yes.
I can
Because
see.
there's $70,000 a pop. If we were to hire one full time, there's $70,000 per person. However, this is something like as Tara said, we don't want to use. we want to approve
Mhm.
the contract. So if we get into a situation where we have to use them,
This is a situation where your paraprofessional, she quits on us. We have to fill that slot tomorrow.
Yeah,
Or-
or we'll be out of compliance with an IEP.
and then get sued.
A
for-
due process will be
And
a
they're,
lot more expensive
they're
than
quick to respond.
general.
So Remindings has been good to work with in that response. They're just very expensive. And we're also gonna be looking into Marikey, to see if they have a similar offering.
Okay, so this only triggers when we have to trigger. It's our option to trigger.
Correct. And Tara and Jared worked very hard. They organized a hiring day that we had a couple weeks ago for all of these positions. And, she's got 2 on the agenda for next week to hire. So hopefully, we don't have to do this at all, but this is that in case of emergency break glass kind of thing.
I'm fine.
Any other questions?
Oh,
Yeah, like you said, hopefully we won't.
I'm gonna do everything I can to not use them for sure.
All right, that was all of the regular deliberation items, the non-agenda items, the new teacher orientation plan, that we had that attachment with our agenda.
Yeah, that's just 2 seconds, just really saying thank you for approving this in the past. We didn't have a really good onboarding program because of the cost. A few months back, the board approved this with the MOU through the contract that we require now all of our new hires to come a day before all the other teachers, and they go through all those things that are attached on that agenda. It's our first time, so we're gonna work out some of the bugs, but as we go, but we're excited because they're gonna get, this came out of feedback from our induction program in the past. It came from feedback from my superintendent cabinet or, advisory committee that's made up of teachers. They just share ideas and problems that they see on the the front line, so to speak, that we might not see when we're, sitting at a computer in an office. So that's what this came from. And we wanted to share it with you that it's happening and we're excited about it. And it's going to happen next Wednesday already.
And what's our total of new teachers this year?
There are 7 new hires,
7.
8 new hires. I forgot about the English person that came in last minute. But
So 8.
I think there's
8
8.
new
Yeah.
I've had some feedback from our substitute teachers about not being oriented, that they get parachuted into a classroom and they don't know how to do the paperwork,
Yeah.
we need to do some outreach to them to ease that.
You are absolutely correct. And we actually talked about, Justin's working on stuff for the first week. We're talking about bringing them all in for a kind of an orientation to just the buildings, the technology, those kinds of things.
Yeah, some of these are retired teachers and, but they haven't taught for 10 years, so all the technology, how to take.
Correct.
how to-
And
how to record
Attendance,
something.
lunch count.
yeah, Kelly
The basic
Services.
things that you need to get through a day.
Yeah, Kelly Services or Aaron, you handle a lot of the stuff that we have to give, the training we have to put them through. So says the state, and they do a fine job. But it's like watch a video and answer a question, and you're good. But the more practical side of things, like how do I, like what do I do if there's a fire drill? What do I do if I have to take attendance?
How do I
those-
take attendance?
those practical things is a blind spot in our program. So we're going to hopefully bring those people in on like the last day of in-service days. We can't touch the contracted teachers, but we would have a lot of our resources available to train those people. So
Good.
it is a good point. And the last thing, Dr. Reed, on our list is I shared with you a letter from Mr. Karcher, who was very, very happy about the turnout of the summer music program. So it should be at your place for your reading pleasure when you get a chance.
76 students. That's
76 students. So it was a tremendous success, so it was seemed to be a home run. So very happy that it turned out that way. So it's another kudos to the board and make sure we move forward. So I also wanted to give a brief update. It's not on the agenda, but since we have a little bit of time, if you don't mind, the plan for the family consumer science classrooms and the science rooms, where we left off, and we still have some work to do. So this is just an anecdote, just keep it in your working memory. 2 of our science teachers teach in non-science equipped rooms. They just teach in typical classrooms. They don't have any running water. They don't have hoods for their labs or anything like that. They don't have lab tables. They have desks. They have requested, and we agree with them, that they could use an upgrade of some sort. Now, Mr. Harley was kind enough to dedicate some of his time to go over and look at all those science labs. We're not at this time recommending that we redo all those science labs, but we
Well,
do.
yeah, and the teachers that are in those science labs are happy with the way they are set up. So the existing, I think it's 4 science rooms that we have there.
I would defer to Mr. McLean.
Is it 4?
4 existing
Yeah.
spots. Yeah.
Yeah.
8, 2, 10, 2, 12, 2, 14.
Yeah, they were satisfied, but we have 2 science teachers that are sitting in the middle rooms with, one has a sink, one does not, and that's it. And they're trying to teach some science classes. We need to make some decisions on what has to happen, if anything, to those rooms. And also the childcare room.
Correct.
The reason I'm pushing on this in the academic is that if we're going to do this, we need to make the decision, and we need to move forward. We have to hire a professional. They have to do the work. And we have to bring it to bid in January, February for construction next summer. If we fool around, we don't do it next summer. Okay, and so if it's important to do, we're coming up to midnight on making a decision, left or right, go or no go.
And there's definitely academic impact. So I wanted to keep it on your radar because we'll be talking about it at Buildings and Grounds, and I know that not
But
always.
there's no reason to talk about it in buildings and grounds unless there's an academic reason to do it. Okay,
Well, I think we've already agreed.
we have,
I think so.
well, then we need to move forward. Okay.
I mean, we talked about it in committee before we
Yeah,
went
we-
and did the,
We've talked about it several times. It's just, we want to make sure that you understood where we're headed with this. The next step would be Buildings and Grounds getting approval to, and audit and finance, obviously, we'll have to approve the money for it, but to get that architect, paid or, hired to do some of the work so that we have something, so we have some plan on what we're voting on if we're going to get the work done, so.
I don't know if there's money available for that anywhere or not.
No, we
I
got
don't know.
$3 million in capital. So, yes, as far as.
Well, I was thinking of outside money too, though.
Oh,
Like grant
yeah, oh,
money or
absolutely.
any kind of,
Yeah, we could get some.
look for
I was hoping to get all the lab equipment from the university when they destroyed the science building, but I wasn't quick enough.
I think they moved some of it too. I also wanted to look at, are you done with that?
Yes, ma'am?
I also wanted to look at the numbers that Justin sent to us.
Mm-hmm.
I do have some questions and
Go ahead. We have an expert in the room on high school numbers or.
look, Ben Franklin looks like they're in good shape. They're all at 21 or less.
Including kindergarten.
So kindergarten's 18, first grade 20.6, second 20.4, and third 19. East Pike's getting a little high at the third grade. Do we anticipate any more? They're at 22.
Don't anticipate anymore, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Now, I think their recommendation is 23 plus 1 at third grade, so they're still within and I'm still,
Suggested guidelines.
yeah, the guidelines.
And there's 3 third grades there.
There's 5.
5.
All right,
Five.
so we have 15 slots. Maximum slots.
There's 5 of everything at Ben Franklin. There's 6 kindergarten at East Pike, and then 3, then 5 in the other 3 grade levels.
Yeah, and so to Mr., I think what you're saying is we'd have to have 5 more enrollees before we went over the guideline, is what you're saying. We have 5 more seats for kids before we were to a point where we'd have to talk about
Yeah,
hiring.
before we start to panic.
Yeah,
And what's our current guideline for 4th and 5th grade?
I haven't been printed in my room.
65 in classrooms.
27 plus 1. 28 is next.
That's too high.
That's the back.
That's too high. We need to rethink that.
27 plus 1, you said?
I think that's what it is currently.
With today's kids, that might have been okay 15 years ago. But today,
That's 4th and 5th grade you're talking.
Mhm.
yeah, 5th grade is still a tested grade level, correct?
But there is a lot more support staff
All right,
in
all right.
these classes too.
In the, which one were you
25.
asking? Third grade is 23, which is in parentheses 22 plus 1. So not really sure what that means. I wasn't here when these guidelines were set.
They would like 22, but you could add one to make 23 if you have to, so you don't have to start another classroom.
22 plus
Right,
1.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm just fuzzy on, does that mean every classroom has to have 23 before we hire?
Yeah.
Okay, I just didn't know.
that's how it used to be, whenever we first started this.
4th and 5th grade are 27.
It's about 27,
I think we should revisit that.
27 plus 1.
right,
No, 26 plus 1.
Okay.
26
So
plus
Mhm.
27,
when every class had 27,
right.
it's time to,
Because you
Talk.
currently have a 4th grade class with 25.5 and a 5th grade class with 25.5. That's a lot of kids to have at that level.
Some of them, though, are life skills students in that one class in 4th grade that would be in life skills most of the time, but they still have to be in homeroom.
Is that why you have a 0.5?
Mhm.
Okay, I was thinking, wait a minute.
Yeah.
As if you do
There's a half a kid.
if you do the math, you know, you just do the, yeah.
Kid
But that's, yeah, so we
Very
do have
fluid
some
ball.
that are like, they're,
That's
one
what
is
it's
one
not.
class,
I
Eisenhower.
think that's 4th grade.
Yeah.
But that's,
And there's
that was
also a
only
5th grade class the
22
same, right, there's a 5th grade class the same way that's 4.
at Eisenhower. Okay, so
Now,
that's,
next year,
So they don't take their core subjects and then they're only in there for science and social studies, and there's 2 paras in there with them whenever they're in the room.
next year when you have all 4th and 5th grade in one building,
It'll be different,
It'll be
it'll be a
much
lot
easier.
different.
Yeah, yeah.
Cause I will have 8 in each classroom instead of 4, you know, I can do
Okay.
better. Yeah, it's still gonna be tight, yeah.
I mean, that right now, there's 9 4th grade
Right.
teachers.
yeah, the numbers will
8
still
5th
be
grade teachers.
high, but
But yeah, that's why the 4th grade classes, because we put them in a homeroom, but they don't take their core subjects in that homeroom. Because I want them included, I want them to be part of all the regular activities. And be part of the parties and things, they need to be assigned to a homeroom.
I don't know, were you here, Erin, when we had the class size reduction teachers? I mean, we got money for that. I don't know if, wait, it was mainly at the elementaries.
I wasn't in the elementary, then I was still.
We have-
And I mean, it was,
we keep.
I know we had the money when I was principal, and I know there was some for
That's what I'm-
at least a few years after that.
I like having.
We hired teachers for
Was it
class size
state
reduction.
program or?
I think it was state. And it was kind of nice because they came in and they just taught literacy and math. So they could teach like 4th grade literacy and math in the morning and then 5th grade literacy and math in the afternoon. So it made the regular classes smaller for the core tested subjects, and it was kind of nice. So that's something we might want to think about if those numbers get too high,
Is hire like one teacher to kind of relieve some of the pressure on
That would-
all of them.
especially like I said, for the core, the literacy and math, the tested areas that we know we can improve.
And that was, it was grant money that funded that, Sue, at
I
that
think it
time?
was state money. Not grant. I think the state just gave class size reduction because the class sizes were so big across the state at that time.
And then they reduced the class sizes for 2-3 years. And that they fixed that problem.
Right.
Stop
And
funding.
then it's another one of those mandates without money.
Yeah, yeah, their relief is send them all to charter cyber school.
And also for math, in Horace Mann, we have one class that 12 of those kids will take a 6th grade math class, so they will not be part of that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see. What we can do is look at
Yeah.
actual
It was-
bodies in
Yeah,
reading
Yeah,
and
I didn't know
math.
some of them were
Yeah.
life skills students,
Yeah,
so
'cause
that
of-
yes,
might
and
be,
we have the autistic support in both buildings now too.
okay.
Yeah, we can come
So it
back.
might be actually smaller number that they're teaching the literacy and math.
Right.
Or something.
Yes.
Yeah, we can come
And we
back
have
in
like
September.
of course, man, we have 12 kids that are taking, Bob Stewart will teach a 6th grade math class, so those kids come out of the regular math class in the afternoon, so 12 kids are coming out of some of those rooms for math. And he's teaching that class to those 12 kids so that they don't have to travel to the junior high.
Which is nice.
Yes, it is very nice.
Yeah.
It's a good use of our resources.
Yeah.
I try.
And then junior high and senior high, these were really interesting. Wait, I don't know how you do a schedule.
He is a master.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I took it just because I'm an egghead.
Mhm.
And I looked at the junior high, the number of teachers that are teaching each subject area, and then how many sections that they have. And I'm sure there's a lot that I don't know. It would have been helpful on both the junior high and senior high. There was a space for other duty if applicable, but there really wasn't anything filled in there except homeroom.
Mhm.
So, I mean, like for Michael Burdick, I know he has 2 American government classes, but he's also doing Dean of Students. So I'm assuming that's what takes the rest of his schedule. But there were some teachers that only have 2 periods or 4 periods or 5 periods. And I just wonder what makes, like in science, are labs included on this sheet?
Labs,
Or they-
biology, chemistry and physics, those are 2-period classes.
They're 2-period classes. So if the teacher's showing 4 periods, they might actually have, some of those might be double.
7, 8.
Okay, all right.
But not every day though, right? They only run labs on certain days.
We dovetailed some of those science classes this year, just because there was a push of social studies. We had a science teacher had to teach us, so that pushed into science, which required to dovetail those classes. So dovetailing that means those students now have to go to a study hall so that they can have those 2 labs a week. Before, if they had 2 periods, they could have that lab anywhere from 2 to 5 times that week, plus receive additional help if they need be. But they were like a self-enclosed study hall. They didn't use all of those periods. Minimum, they would use 2. So now they got it, since we dovetailed, they got to go out to study halls for those days.
Yeah, that was an interesting document too. The study hall. The study hall piece. But I mean, I was looking at things like English language arts, ELA. There's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, correct? And high school ELA is 9, 10, 11, 12.
Mhm.
Yes.
So there's 9 ELA teachers at the junior high. There's 6 at the high school. That didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. There's 8 science teachers at the high school. There's 7 math teachers at the high school, but only 6 ELA.
6.
There's, there'd be 6.5 Lee as a halftime drama teacher. To make 7.
Mhm.
Is Lee-
Dr. Rigg, I could speak to part of that. I don't have a schedule out in front of me, but the reason why we have that many teachers is we at 6th grade we have double blocks of ELA. So because the teachers have 80-minute periods for ELA at 6th grade and actually ELA in 7th grade as well, and then students that we would guide toward like tier 3 level services, we would get a double block in the 8th grade. But we have more ELA teachers because the schedules, the teachers are doing double periods with the same group of kids, so that requires more ELA teachers.
Okay, so that's why like some of the teachers it shows they only have 4 periods, but really they're the extended periods,
That's
right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, for ELA, they would only have 3 periods marked down, unless in like an 8th grade they might have one double period and a couple of single periods to give them 4. But yes, that's likely, at least if you're looking at ELA. And again, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage. I don't have my schedule in front of me, but that would answer why some of the schedules look like they have fewer periods. But all the teachers at the junior high teach at least 6 instructional periods.
Yeah, it looks like most of them have a flex and a win period too.
It's a 9-period schedule, so there would be 6 instructional periods plus a flex period for 7, plus
And a
their
win.
prep, and either a win or a duty. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't want to take away any ELA teachers, but at the high school, it might be nice to have another one. Especially, I'm looking at the ones who are teaching the AP classes. There's 2 teachers, am I right? Farino and Steve,
Correct.
where they're the ones that have 7 classes of
Yeah,
English and a lot of students. I mean, Farino has 180.
118. It's 118.
Matt Neal has 180.
Where was Farino? Farino has 118, and Steve has 170. That's a lot of students to teach English and try to check papers and do a quality job with writing and everything.
It has put
That's a
a
lot, a lot of
considerable
kids.
strain on it, especially our 9th and 10th grade team, where, ninth is that pre-test year and 10th grade is their tested year.
Right.
And we were able to have the 9th and 10th grade teachers, I believe they have 6 classes. We were able to put in a common plan because we have to turn around our results. And this is an effort to do that. But the other teachers, most likely, except for Lee Lyons, would have 7.
Yeah, I mean, they were all at 6 and 7.
Yeah, I did,
And I'm not blaming you or faulting the schedule. I'm just saying that's
the
a
numbers
lot of
teachers we
kids.
have and the program we have to run and the assignments that need to take place. I went back and looked at that. I think it was 2001, 2002. We had 3 grade levels. We had 75 teachers at the senior high school. The average load was 5 to 6 teachers. 2011, 2012, when the 9th grade came up, it was around 72 and a half teachers, and we were at 6 periods. We were about 58 and change, and we're at 7 periods.
That's what you have now, 58 teachers.
A little over 58, like 58 and change. So, yeah, there has been
With how many fewer students?
we don't have fewer. Last time I checked, we have 930 students for this school year.
So that's not less than what,
It is not fewer.
but
And
that many fewer teachers.
And those numbers, in the next couple weeks, there's gonna be an ebb and flow, because there's gonna be schedule changes going on. There's dual enrollment that's happening. It is 6 to 7 periods of instruction, because we've had to enroll teachers.
As far as the numbers go, so Bob, didn't you say that there was only 14 more students than there were 10 years ago?
Yeah, there's
So
actually.
the number's
14
been
more.
relatively stable.
As far as students.
As far as number of students, they have, yeah. A lot
Yeah,
of places
and
have dropped
decreasing
this.
that many teachers. Yeah.
I would- I
You're
would
looking
look
at
that.
teachers, Bill Judy has 153 students. He has
I would-
two AP classes. I mean, that's a
Those-
lot.
Those numbers, those averages, that's the total number of faculty, and the total number of students. And included in that number would be special education teachers.
Right.
You look at the average for core subject, you probably find it higher than that.
Is Casey our new teacher, Casey Murphy?
Casey Murphy is Casey Hoffman.
Oh.
Casey Hoffman.
She's been here for
She's,
3 years.
Social studies.
Yeah, I mean, she has 171 students that she
Yeah.
sees
We have,
during the day.
our social studies department has probably taken the greatest hit with the number of teachers. We have 4 full-time, compared to, I think it was 8 or 9 a number of years ago. We also have individuals who have certification who are teaching that, like Nate Warren is teaching it. Melissa Nyberg also runs the Ideal program. So we are, relying on that. Eric Pushkar will be teaching social studies this year
Right.
as well.
I just want us to think about, are we doing what's best for students? We always say that that's our bottom line. And looking at these numbers and
We have-
knowing what the teachers,
We have 2 bottom lines that are competing. We have fewer resources and we have fewer teachers. And in the elementary grade levels, and I think the junior high cert level, those classes and those offerings are fixed. The senior high is student request driven. So whenever we have a retirement, we have to take a close look and see by the numbers, can it work? And it can, but there's trade-offs in other areas. One time we had study halls within classrooms. We can't do that anymore. But if we have study halls in classrooms, then we're going to give up academic offerings, electives and so forth. And nobody wants to do that. So to maintain the academic program we have, we have to have study halls with larger numbers in it.
that was on my list here. that One of the board members asked me to ask you to address, so.
Yeah,
we-
you talk
we-
about the tech ed specifically. Tech ed teachers have two of them have multiple study halls.
Yeah, I can address that. There are 2 academic areas which have fewer requests for it, given the number of personnel that they have. One of which is tech ed and the other is Spanish. We must have 21 periods of supervision within the schedule. That would be at least 2 study halls, well, it is 2 study halls, periods 1 through 9. We have an underclassman and an upperclassman. And we have a teacher, 1 teacher per lunch period. And the rest of those supervisor assignments are filled with paraprofessionals, Stan and Dan Roan, when he has an opportunity to come up from athletics, will assist in that way. And, we have to make decisions, we are trying to maintain the academic program first and foremost. So there has to be give in other areas. And that's the study halls and that's the supervision.
How many students requested tech ed that couldn't get it this year? Do you know? Or can you find
I
out
have to
for
go
us?
back and look, but I can tell you overall scheduling, 94% of our students who requested classes got them. And the counselors are now
That's
working
pretty
through.
good, that's
Yeah,
really
that is
good,
good.
that's really good number.
Now, wait, too, on this study hall sheet, like Mr. Stantz has 4 listings, but 3 of them, if I'm not mistaken, are actually the same study hall. It's just different numbers of study halls on different days.
Correct, like,
So,
he probably has one of those study halls that since we had to dovetail the sciences.
right, some days he has
Yeah.
science kids,
Yeah.
some days he doesn't. Yeah.
Also, like Jason and the music program will run one music offering Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and another ensemble Tuesday, Thursday. So some of those kids who don't have it 5 days have to go to a study hall. So there will be fluctuating rosters for those study halls.
And then there's Mr. Stantz and Mr. Rend also, both are on the list for study hall section 19. Is that something where they do it every other day, or they tag team the study hall because it's?
I'll have to take a look at that. They may have it.
I think 2 teachers are in there at the same time, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, so
So, and I'll tell you why. We had to get
has a
creative
large
with
number
that.
of students.
We had to get creative with that, whether it's in the LGI or the cafeteria, we have a larger spaces to have that. Because at times, when we have to have coverage, because there may be a lack of substitutes, we will collapse, like take 1 teacher out of that, so that teacher will have those 2 study halls, so we can now use the teacher to cover the class period.
So
Avoid
section
the auditorium.
19, Mark Rend is assigned 40 and Keaton is assigned 42. So there's 82 kids in that cafeteria study hall with 2 teachers.
That's correct.
That's how I read it. Okay. I just want to make sure I was reading it correctly. But yeah, it just seems like a shame that we have that great program. And the 2 teachers who are very passionate about
Oh,
teaching
no
the
doubt.
program and they're spending 3 periods a day in study.
Both of those teachers do an incredible job with the students have an interest or aptitude for that program. The numbers of requests have dropped off for some reason. We have to take a look at that and say, what can we do to increase those numbers? We've also, they get to use, all students have to have at least 3 credits of science. They can use their 3rd credit science for science of engineering and the category. So they can substitute. We thought that would help draw. And I think also it's one of those things we have to take a look at. They have so many wonderful offerings that a lot of them are singletons. Since they're singletons, they won't always schedule because there may be a graduation requirement class that they're running at the same time where they can't be in there. So, and maybe taking a look at and say, like we did in social studies, maybe we have to rotate those electives to have more offerings of them to make it more available. But there are 3 to 4 pathways in tech ed, which are wonderful pathways, but offering all those pathways and having fewer offerings of those and creating time singletons, when that singleton is up against maybe a graduation requirement, then that student has to fulfill the graduation requirement.
The question was, what's a la carte? Is that family consumer science? That's what I thought. Okay.
A la carte.
A class with 1 teacher has 6 a la carte. I thought that must be because there was only then there were 2 other family consumer science teachers, right?
Yeah, a number of years ago, that lab area only held 16. And with the board's approval, we were able to put an additional kitchen in there, which raised it to
Oh, you
20.
showed us that one, yeah, okay, when we did the tour.
Jackie Cup teaches, it's a very popular class, and she has been teaching 6, sometimes 7, but she's definitely at 7 right now.
Yeah, that's 6.
Yeah, there's 6 on the sheet.
She may have a resource in there. But there are 6 filled classes.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thanks for this information. It's really interesting to look at. And like I said, I know most people wouldn't have said I made a little tally sheet.
That's,
Just to give me a perspective, from the junior high, senior high. It's easy to look at the numbers at the elementary, they are what they are, but so many you have so many moving parts here. But I hate to see subjects like ELA and, even math, Mike, at the junior high, I see there are a couple teachers with 8 periods and a lot of students. I mean, that's a lot of students, was it Jackie Gentili, I believe, had a boatload.
I think too,
Well, she has 3 Common Core math. Oh, no, that wasn't her. She has
Jeffrey
5.
Duffy.
Jeff Duffy has 8. I mean, one's flex and one's win, but still he has 4 Common Core math 2 classes, 2 pre-algebra classes. For these heavy subjects, literacy, math, science, and social studies, it just seems like a lot of students that these teachers are trying to, and I know they're doing their best and I know they do a great job at what they do, but you can only do so much with what you have, and having that, especially, I mean, when I looked at that ELA, I thought those teachers that are teaching AP and have all that writing.
and you look at
Yeah.
where we,
Having been that person, I can tell you that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
No doubt about that.
so that's, because of economics, in large part, the way we manage our program is by retirements because of certifications. So there happen to be retirements in ELA, there happen to be retirements in social studies. And facing these leaner times, those are places we have to look at and say, if we're not going to hire somebody, what does the program look like? Now, having Michael do Dean of Students, recognize there's a need for a Dean of Students, but there's how many periods out of social studies
Right.
did it take?
Right.
So, it's.
I mean, it definitely looks like we need ELA and social studies.
We could probably, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say,
I know the board is
Well,
hesitant to hire people, but again, if we're doing what's best for our students. Yes,
It's a balancing act. And they've been doing a really phenomenal job of balancing it and doing the best we can. No question that additional teachers would be great. But we also have to be able to pay the piper. And unfortunately, the burden has fallen to the senior high school. It's tough to go to 30 kids in an elementary school classroom. You have a number of kids in the classroom at the elementary school level. That's what you have when you have 30 new kids in kindergarten as a teacher, and there's no choice. Whereas we have some choice at the senior high. I agree that it's probably as thin as it can go, and as long as we were losing students, we could continue doing it. But that trend has flattened out now.
Yeah, we're not losing.
Yeah, we're not losing students, and if anything, the trend is at the elementary school, we're starting to see classes get larger again. So, we're gonna have to address that, but I'm, as much as I'd like to hire these teachers, we have to also have to be responsible to our community.
We do, and I think maybe there are areas we can look at.
Sure.
Are there other areas that we could cut back? And I know this won't make me very popular, but since the ESSER's money went away, do we still really need 4 school psychologists? Could we have 2 teachers and 2 school psychologists? I mean,
well, last
especially
year-
when I see we're hiring, people to support some of that work with the observations and
Yeah, but those people weren't doing what the
The
school
same,
psychs are
right.
doing. They're doing
I get
progress monitoring. But in the school psychs last year, I have to get the data, and you probably have it better than I do, but I think it was somewhere around 289 evaluations that were completed.
Wow.
So it's not like,
So that's
and that's
gifted
just,
and special ed.
that's gifted, special ed, reevals, record reviews, all those things.
I don't know
And-
how anybody would be able to write 289 between two staff.
And that's
That'd be a lot.
just that one segment of what we have them doing. We also have them doing all that data work for them too. I mean, it's something we can continue to talk about. And it's something we can continue to look at when these, when opportunities do present themselves, can we take from here to strengthen this over there?
Yeah, because bottom line, the
So-
reason we're here is to teach the kids.
Yeah, and I also think we better be looking at the forecast of special ed needs coming up as the COVID students come up, because, we're seeing really high numbers of pre-K kids who have language problems and behavioral challenges that mean that group is going to come up needing greater individualized services, much more testing, the reeval numbers, and you would have your finger on the pulse of like that group moving through. The question is whether that group moving through is a blip, a COVID blip that moves its way through, or is there a new normal coming our way?
I would say the past 2 years, the numbers have been pretty high.
Pretty high,
Consistent
yeah.
with kids entering kindergarten with high needs.
Yeah, that's my concern about
The kids that are in
monkeying with the number of school psychologists, knowing that this is.
Well, and that also, less than a decade ago, we had one part-time person. Okay, and we had, a school counselor, we literally had one part-time person doing the work that 4 people were doing. Which, so no work was getting done.
Right, it was, yeah,
The quality of the
Correct.
work was not.
it was just
We
test and place,
counselor
test
at
and place,
both
test
sides
and
of Howard
place.
and Horseman.
Brenda and I
Yep,
both
it's a
split our
shared.
days.
Who's your counselor?
Brenda Obarto,
Oh,
yeah,
So-
she usually does mornings and I do afternoons with flip-flop, or Krista does, so there's always somebody there.
So-
We've got a very intricate schedule that we work through.
It'll be easier.
One more year, like you're saying, one more year.
Fall 25.
you can do it.
Hang in there, kid.
To
Hey,
follow up,
without Krista and Brenda, we couldn't do it, and they've been wonderful supports. I can't thank them both enough.
I would say this too, that senior high teachers have faced this challenge and the strain, and they don't bring that into the classroom. They're extremely professional in what they do. They're not afraid of hard work. You see a couple of them initiating ideas and programs on top of everything else that they do. You try to find a balance between efficiency and effectiveness. But, there's a couple of elephants in the room. We've all heard these discussions, but something has got to give, because we can't put any more assignments on the teachers. They're running 6, many of them at 7. The numbers have grown. We hear the economics of the matter. We look at their socioeconomics, have changed dramatically in our district. We're, out of the high school, somewhere around 40%, and it's probably about another 5, which is underreported. It's 45%. And, the tax base doesn't seem to be as strong as it once was. And we have increasing costs. And, we're approaching diminishing marginal returns. It's just because, we need to keep reinventing, but,
Yeah, we do have the same problem
and you have,
that the elementary school has, is that even if we cut a teacher out or we don't provide something, we still have to put those kids somewhere.
we're at that point now that
Yeah, so if you cut driver's ed, those kids still have to go somewhere. So, and we can't put them out on the street.
and
So Mike, to follow up, and I was gonna ask this of Tara, or actually both of you. You say it's COVID, or COVID related.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's
So,
more to it than that.
Yeah.
so, yeah, and that's kind of the question I'm gonna ask is define what you mean by the impact of COVID. And yes, you're gonna have this little bit of a bump here, but in another 2 or 3 years, those kids will not have experienced COVID in any shape or form,
Right. And
or at least
But that remains to be seen whether or not it's a societal issue that now is entrenched. And so that isn't going to be a blip that follows its way and graduates high school. And
Okay.
then there's normalcy behind it. Whatever normalcy is going to look like is a question.
So,
I would
Well,
say
I
there's
think-
nothing,
I'm not sure.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think even before the pandemic, we started to see a difference in behaviors. The students coming into kindergarten and coming into school.
We've certainly seen kids being less prepared to be students in the last decade.
And that's gen ed and special ed. It's not just.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're
Having more
talking
kids
about
coming
across the
in.
board.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's COVID or not. There's no research that says it is related to COVID, but I do know like the past 2 years, the needs are
I suspect
extreme.
COVID is just a shorthand for this, what
so
It's sad.
society is producing into our kindergartens.
True. I mean, there is the fact that early education, what kids experienced
Mhm.
during COVID, there are absolute deficits that can be linked to just poorer instruction,
Lack of
worse
exposure. too.
environments, lack
Yeah.
of exposure. What we see in early research about the effects of COVID on language development is not good. So, the deficits kids are coming in with from COVID itself, which is lack of exposure, and hopefully that component can hopefully resolve itself. But we're also seeing, more device use in very
Just gonna
young
say that.
children. We're seeing
devices
families-
and, oh, yeah.
Like
Yes.
phones and, yeah.
and parents who
Or
aren't
iPads.
talking to their kids nearly as much as they would have in the past. That's likely not going to go away because that's not a singularly COVID issue. But we absolutely see trajectories of language development and that are poor in preschool kids coming into school. But what we're also seeing is that there is less of a foundation of language entering schools that was already present prior to COVID. And so language is the foundation for academic success. If kids don't have good language abilities, their learning of ELA, math, whatever is impaired. And there's going to be a struggle with that. So developmental language disorder occurs in 1 in 20 kids. That's not diagnosed as much as it should be. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which is also another concern that is COVID related, but also was increasing prior to COVID. FASD is occurring in about 1 in 20 kids. That means every single classroom at the elementary level would likely have a child who has fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, some kind of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So those kids are right now not being diagnosed as FASD, they're being diagnosed as ADHD, ODD, OCD, autism,
So
ODD is probably the primary, or they're kids who have multiple diagnoses, but no actual assessment of the likelihood of prenatal exposure. So they're not being diagnosed as kids with exposure issues, but they are being diagnosed with special education needs.
So I have 2 follow-up questions. You indicated that there was some evidence that even before the COVID, that the language development, because of this, because the parents aren't talking to the kids or whatever. So what is the role of the school district, the school board, the teachers, what the administration, in addressing that problem, if it's really contributing to
Mhm.
the kindergartner that shows up that's not ready to go.
Right.
And I'm kind of open-ended here, but the kind of just brainstorm suggested idea is, do we have a PR campaign? Okay, that we
Push on it.
have him out on Indiana Morning saying,
Mhm.
get rid of the phones, mom and dad, talk to them at supper time, because it really not just to preach to them, but to try to explain to them
The impact.
the impact that it's gonna have when they come to
Absolutely.
kindergarten.
Lisa, have you heard of the book yet by Jonathan Haidt, Haidt? Have you read that?
Mhm.
How
What's
is
the
it?
title?
The Anxious Generation?
Oh, yeah, I have that one.
How the
yeah.
Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness.
Yeah.
It got really good
so
reviews
it's contributing to language deficits, but it's also contributing to
Other types of
mental illness and other kinds of mental health issues. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very good.
And there's some
read.
research about the changes in the brain of a
brain,
child
yes.
and how it
Yes.
lights up in different areas compared to drugs.
I mean, it's somewhat self-serving, this, but is there, and I don't want to get on my soapbox here, but it seems to me with a kind of the breakdown of the churches, the breakdown of the family, that a lot of this things that were done in those institutions as such are now kind of coming to the school districts to actually have to take care of that. So and beyond the PR, is there something else that we can do to provide an education to the parents, to provide, I mean, is there a role that we play in the bigger community to help these kids so when they get here, they're not behind the curve as much?
It'd be nice to have and I don't know if this is possible. I come up with ideas sometimes
I
and
know.
actually,
Me too.
like a pre-screening when a kid's 3 years old. Screen them at that age, maybe indicate that they're behind and provide parents with resources.
And maybe,
Well, and
Yeah.
everything that we talked about with NCEE, having that, the importance of that early childhood intervention. Yeah, we have 2 pre-Ks now.
We should have 10.
We should have.
Yes.
We should have enough
And I
good
would say
service all
pre-K
the
is
kids.
one good solution.
It's not the only, but.
It's not the only solution. It needs to be, having a strong pre-K and strong daycare programs is able to counter some of that language loss. But we're talking, whatever the numbers are in each of those age groups for teacher to student ratio, you still don't have the teacher to parent or the parent to child ratio that you often have in someone's home, right? So you're substituting how many kids are in the pre-K classes. How many?
Sure,
What's
that's
the number?
We didn't get those numbers. It started with kindergarten.
20.
But yeah, they're
So
20 max.
20
Those
to
numbers were.
one teacher and one para.
2 pairs, 1 teacher.
2 pairs, 1 teacher. Okay, that's not bad.
Still a
That's not
lot.
bad. It's
20 is
still
still a lot.
It's still, well, I
For a
mean, just in
pre-K.
terms of if you have 3 adults in that classroom with 20 children, you're going to maximize
1 to 7.
language growth more by influencing parent-child interactions, right?
Mhm.
Increasing the quality and quantity of parent-child interactions is likely to have a better effect than, pre-K is a way, absolutely, kids need the structured programs to be more successful in school once they enter. But really, the 0 to 3 population is a population of, that's when they get significant amount of home interaction, right? Parental
Yeah.
interaction, and the quality and quantity of that interaction is linked to language abilities that are then linked to English, language arts, and later outcomes.
Okay, and the second question,
Mhm.
follow up to something you said. Again, I used an acronym, earlier and got chastised
Oh,
for it.
FASD.
It's a strong word.
You mentioned various diagnoses and that you said that there was one in particular that
Mm.
they weren't catching or they or being
Well-
misdiagnosed. And so my question
Yeah.
is,
It's not that they're being misdiagnosed
Mhm.
necessarily. The problem right now is that fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is not an educational classification necessarily. It would be other health impaired. And so many of those kids who have fetal exposure to drugs or alcohol are being captured, their needs are being met via an IEP with a diagnosis of oppositional defiance or ADHD or emotional disturbance, which we can talk about whether that's really an appropriate category to still have in our schools, but that's a PA issue that's higher than this level. But that's where those kids are being served. I'm not saying that's inappropriate. I'm just saying that the numbers are high, much higher than we are accounting for. So a lot of kids who have substantial behavioral problems in our school district are likely or possibly children who have fetal alcohol exposure that's not been followed, right? It's not
okay,
been.
and so was it just that fetal alcohol exposure that is not being correctly diagnosed? Or I thought you mentioned something else.
Developmental language disorder
Okay.
is probably underdiagnosed, yes.
Okay, and so my follow-up question to you and to Tara is, if that's the case, then how do we change that particular paradigm to try to do that evaluation or whatever to catch it sooner?
Mhm.
And that's, again, it's an open
This
end.
is an issue that's pretty well established around the country. So this is not necessarily, this is not specific to Indiana Area School District.
And the fetal alcohol syndrome would be diagnosed by a doctor.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but the learning disability that you were talking about,
Developmental language
yeah, the
disorder.
developmental,
Mhm.
say it again, please.
Developmental language disorder or specific
Developmental
language
language
impairment
disorder.
is another
Okay.
term.
So my question is, when we do these evaluations on our students, do we specifically look for that? Or if we're not
Yes.
catching it,
Mhm.
I mean, one of the things that Tom was really on his bandwagon here sometime, a long time ago, was the fact that we weren't evaluating our kindergarten kids till they were in February of their kindergarten year, which was almost useless at that point in time. So kind of taking off on that, is there a different way, a different approach, a different, to try to pick that up if that is a real issue in them learning how to read and write?
I'm on the Drug and Alcohol Commission Board, just from the fetal alcohol or the drug exposure kind of things, that has a stigma that goes with it. So the mother doesn't want to tell you that she smoked. The mother doesn't want to tell you that she drank. The mother won't tell you that she is using heroin or whatever it may be. And sometimes they go have the baby and the hospital would not even know. And so it's hard to find those kids.
It can be
Yeah.
hard to find those
Yeah.
kids, and the United States is not doing a good
Right.
job finding those kids
No.
or identifying them. And the bigger, if it had been
Right.
called, is it Campbell or Smith, or it's a very common name. If it had been called Smith syndrome, then
Yes.
it probably would be identified more often than fetal alcohol spectrum,
there's
but
a-
unfortunately it's called fetal alcohol.
Right, and there's a stigma that goes with that, and there's
Yes.
legal consequences to the mother sometimes too, if they admit
In
that.
some states, but,
yeah.
but
So that's part of the problem too.
that's part of the problem.
Regardless, though, whenever our kids are entering kindergarten, they're screened. So their needs are met.
Yeah.
They find them, they locate them, and they're addressed. I think the key is finding them earlier
Yes.
and preparing
Earlier
them
than
before,
kindergarten.
earlier than kindergarten. And obviously our pre-K programs are excellent, but there's also a population that doesn't qualify for the pre-K program. And there's just as many needs there.
I would say screenings at that earlier level, like when you screen kids in 0 to 3 for language issues, they're not getting early intervention services typically for language delays only. They have to have they have to have a much more, what we say as SLPs is they almost, they have to be a noodle and they can, pass the language screenings at those earlier ages. Kids who have speech problems, articulation issues will get into services much more readily, and those than kids who have language delays, unless there are significant delays at 1 and 2 years old and they're still not talking at all. Those kids will get in, but then they're dismissed often before they come to kindergarten. But they've started life with a much more challenging profile in terms of language development, which typically does not go away. And so whether or not those kids are then re-referred for language intervention that doesn't always happen. That doesn't always happen. They may have struggles in academic areas. And it's not really until they're evaluated for special education needs, like, difficulties with language arts, difficulties with math, that then an SLP gets their eyes on them again and does an evaluation and determines that indeed they have some language difficulties that are likely or could definitely contributing to the academic struggle.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Something to consider too is like whole group instruction. I don't even know if that's possible.
language
but
instruction, there are
language.
some really good programs that can be
Mhm.
conducted.
That's-
I
it's-
mean,
it's
you're
a lot
putting
of
something
population.
else on the classroom teacher to.
I was thinking more of the speech clinician delivering that,
Mhm.
but that's more on them as well.
Yeah, and then, caseloads are high, so,
Yeah.
it's always, I go back to what you were saying, it's like, you have to manage, delivering all of these different kinds of services. And yes, there is much more being placed on school districts than really ought to be on a school district's plate. But we're responding then to, the social challenges that walk in the door when the kids arrive at the doorstep. So,
How many of the speech interns do we have coming this year?
A bunch.
Do we?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're getting some-
Yeah, we have teams that go to both Ben Franklin and East Pike and work on, they do those burst sessions.
Yeah.
We've seen some really good results from
Yeah.
those. And we have a crew
Just
that
wondering.
go to the 4-5 buildings to help out with
They
don't know how
interventions
So
many.
it's
there.
12 who
Okay.
come in each, what's that right? Who
I can't
come in
remember what
each
Lori-
clinic. Gosh, I should know this. I was just reviewing this for our annual review, but.
Last
What
year
about
we
the
had
literacy
three
GAs? How
schools.
many of them did we get for this year?
4?
We, the board
Oh, but
approved
there's
us
a
to
difference between
hire
an
full-
intern.
we hired
Right,
full.
you do have
Right.
4, oh, good.
Yeah, we have 3 full-time and 2 half-time people that are going to.
2 10 hours.
Yep.
Okay.
Right, and that's the interns. I was thinking you were talking about the first session clinics where, Casey Coburn and Tamara Leeper come with a crew and they serve a lot of kids in a short period of time.
Good.
So
They've
there's,
become a really vital piece to that early language acquisition.
Just to add another layer, our numbers in speech are 10% higher compared to those in the state. So, no, that's not, that's not
That's
good.
a challenge.
We want to be at the state or below,
Mhm.
but it's been consistently higher
You
and
mean
it's
as
going
a
to continue to
district?
grow. Yeah,
But that also could be that we're actually looking for these kids.
it could be.
And we're testing them and we're identifying them and we're working toward them, whereas some other districts
Right.
across the state are not.
Absolutely.
They're closing their eyes to the problem.
yeah, and historically, there's been a tendency for SLPs around the country to put more kids on their caseload who have articulation difficulties, and sort of neglect the kids who have language problems, in some respects saying, well, they'll get that in the classroom. The problem is that language is driving classroom success or failure. And so which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you address the language, or do you expect teachers to teach the language simultaneously as they're trying to teach academics and expect the child to succeed? So that's the issue across the country. This is,
I also suspect that parents in today's world are reading less to kids at night.
Yes.
That actual sitting down and reading is
Yes.
not occurring. It's too easy.
Well, it's part of the device thing.
Mhm.
You're giving kids a device and saying, here, watch
Well, yeah,
this,
Yeah.
as opposed to reading
Right.
books and carrying on a conversation about what you're reading.
I could watch Wonderful World of Disney once a week, and the rest of the time was reading to books and things. And these kids, they have everything I watch plus everything that's been produced in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to turn it on. And I suspect these homes that exist without books. Well,
I know we're
you're not participating.
Didn't make her,
37 minutes past what Rob wanted.
We were done with the agenda at 7:06.
But I think this is good.
Sue brought it up. You brought it all up.
No, it is.
We could have.
I think it's important to.
Oh, it is a tremendously important discussion. I mean, long story short, there's no one sitting around with nothing to do. You know,
Right.
we are,
Right.
we have a whole staff that with a lot on their plate, a
We
lot of
do.
challenges,
We
no
do.
doubt about it.
And again, I want us to always keep our focus on what's best for the kids and how
Yes, ma'am.
we're teaching.
And we'll get you those numbers of actual, butts and seats for our 4th, 5th grade ELA and math, so we have a more
Oh, yeah.
clear picture of actual how many students each
Yeah,
of
and
them.
we had about 4 withdrawals today too.
Oh, did you?
Yes,
So-
Where did they go with it as well?
other school districts. Some one went to Marion Center, one went someplace out of state,
How's your transit?
Usually get, I'm sorry, what was the question? Or-
As far as the transiency at the
Oh.
high school?
We average 45 to 70 students in the summer.
They come in and then how many do we lose?
I have to
The
check
same,
on
or-
that. I
I'm
think,
just curious.
I think the net is we gain more than we lose.
Gain one.
And for we were working on another problem. I just figured it's a good time to share. We have 78 students currently enrolled in outside Cybers. That are 78 that are costing our taxpayers $1.7 million.
And that number has been pretty level.
It's been, for the last couple of years, it's been right around that 1.6, 1.7.
but the numbers of students, I thought it was usually around 90.
Yeah, it's actually, the number of students actually has gone down,
The cost.
but the cost has
Cost
remained the
went up.
same. So, so it's a challenge.
Thank the legislature.
Well, that's what we're working on, sir. Okay.
Anything else for the good of the group?
Hey, thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you,
Appreciate it.
everybody.
Having fun, yeah.
Thank you.
So.